All right, so welcome everybody. My name's James Vladyka. I'm one of the Navionics Marine Specialists. I'm a fishing guide out here in Vermont. We do 365 days a year. I have a partner has a pretty big fishing boat. We do stuff in the summertime as well as in the winter. Fortunate to work with a lot of great companies, Navionics being one of them, as well as Hydroglow, which we'll be talking about tonight. There's other companies out there that I do work with, Clam, Ice Team, and Vexilar, Lowrance, a bunch of other things. I'm very thankful for all those companies and their support that they give me. So moving on here, let's talk about ice fishing for crappies at night. I think I'm going to run this poll to start off. I got a poll up here. I click on the poll, and it's basically just going to ask you guys, have you ever ice fished at night for crappie? And it's a multiple choice question here. I'm going to launch that right now. We'll kind of get an idea if we're talking to people that have already fished for crappies at night, or if we haven't, so we know some of this might be redundant for some of you folks. All right, so it looks like everybody's voted. About 23 of 29 have voted, so we got a few more in there. 24. We got more people coming in, so we'll leave that poll up. 87. Okay, I'm actually going to end that poll here so you guys can see those results. There's the results. So it looks like 17 no's, 9 yeses, and 1 looking forward to it now. All right, so let's get this thing going. All right, you kind of see this was it was a nice night out, so we're actually not even fishing in a shelter here in this picture that you see here. We're actually outside, and we're kind of circled around the light, all sitting on our pails. Let's start this thing. Okay, so we're going to do a little overview here. So the things we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to be talking about finding the right spot, the setup, powering the light, electronic options, bait and tackle and rod options, tips and techniques, and not just for ice fishing crappie. So before we were talking to someone that was out there that was watching and was wondering if they could pick up any information for stuff that isn't ice fishing, and we can definitely go over that. If you have any questions at the end, we can kind of go over that stuff. Let's see here. Okay, so finding the hot spot. Now, right here you'll see it says it's not magic. So basically what I mean by it's not magic is you cannot just take a hydroglow light and go out and put it anywhere in the lake and it's going to magically call in all these fish for you. You can't just go, oh, there's crappies in this body of water. I'm going to sink the light and, hey, 10, 15, 20 minutes, they're going to be here. So it doesn't work that way. Although there's been times where I've had, some pretty crazy results, and I often wonder, were the fish there, or, did the fish see the light? Did they move from the deep water to the shallow? But with that being said, scouting. So you see over here on the right-hand side of the page here, I hope it's on the right-hand side, not the left for you. There's a little map. I think I have I don't know if you guys can see my cursor right there. Can you guys see my cursor? Anybody want to shoot me a text so you can see that? Okay, let's see. Yes, okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to use my arrow here. All right, so there's a couple ways that I like to, kind of find the right spot. So if I'm going to a body of water that I already know about, I will, I'll kind of already have an idea of where maybe the weed edges and stuff are. For me, fishing for crappie with the hydroglow light, most of my best results are in, 12 feet or less of water with standing weeds or on weed edges. I've fished in deep water for the crappies and I've had results, but I haven't had enough results where I think that it's solely the reason why it's, you know, better than if I was, you know, just fishing out there or fishing with a regular light. So most of my results that I stand by have all been, you know, 12 feet or under of water. And on this map here, you'll see, so if I didn't know, if I knew there was crappies in an area and I wanted to go, you know, hydroglow a spot, there's a couple things I would do. I would get out my Navionics map, and, you know, I got my cell phone right here. For $10, you can have the Navionics mobile app. How many of you out there have the Navionics mobile app? Check through the chat here. So somebody raise their hand. No. Yep, I do. Okay, so for any of those that don't have the Navionics mobile app, I'm just going to show you real quick. If you have an Android or an iPhone, there's something called the Navionics mobile app. And what that is it's basically what you're seeing here on the screen. It's showing you the contours of the lake. So you can kind of see where the shallow water is. You can see where the weed edges would be and things like that. For your phone, it's around $10. If you have a tablet, it's about $50. You can navigate with it. There's tons and tons of things that you can do with the Navionics mobile app. You can actually go on now to your Play Store. Well, not now, but you can go onto your Play Store and you can download a free version and get an idea of what it is. And it won't be too long before that you're gonna understand that you're gonna want to have the, you know, spend the $10 on the paid version. Hey Dana, you got to get that app. Okay, so with that being said, you're gonna look down here at this map, and if I have never fished here before, I'm gonna look over here. You see where my cursor is? I'm gonna see. Well, this is Lake Champlain, and I kind of have an idea of that the weeds typically don't grow much further out than 7-8 feet of water. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look on here, and I'm going to see, you know, see up the shoreline, see 5 feet right here. You can see there's little 7-foot flats here. So I pretty much have an idea that if I'm going to go hydroglowing out here and I'm going to be on the weed edges, it's going to be up these shorelines. It's going to be pretty much in this area. You can see it's a little shallower here and stuff. So get some advice from the bait shop. If you're going to the spot, stop in the bait shop, see if they know where the guys and gals may be catching the fish. Then if not, you know, get yourself out there. Now, yeah, hydroglowing, we're going to be hydroglowing at night. But it's always good. Whenever I'm hydroglowing, I don't like to just get out there at dark because of the whole factor that it's not magic. You know, I want to kind of find where the crappies are. So whether you've been fishing there all day and you're going to hydroglow into the night, or if you can get there, you know, maybe an hour before dark, that prime time, you know, mostly in the morning and the afternoons, and when we all become better fishermen, that's when the fish are active and stuff. So I'd like to get out there, you know, an hour, 2 hours early minimum, and go try to find some fish. Now, if I get out there and I start pre-fishing and I find an area where I'm catching a couple crappies, that is going to be a spot where I'm most likely going to set up. So it's a good idea to get out there, do a little scouting before nighttime, try to find that species that you're targeting. In this case, it's crappie. If you find those crappies, that's probably going to be the spot where you're going to want to set up. And that pretty much covers, I found a crappie. Now what? So we're going to move forward here. Looks like I have somebody up in chat. I'm just going to go check this out. I will when I can afford it. Yes, sir. Understandable. Well, get out there and get yourself the, you know, the free version and check it out. You can navigate. You can do all kinds of things with that, and it'll be beneficial to you. And then when the time's right. Right, so the setup and then fishing around the light. So what you're seeing here on the left-hand side, this is a clam hub shelter. When I'm going out and I have multiple clients or I'm fishing with multiple friends, especially because it's pretty cold in the winter, I'm setting up a hub shelter. So these hub shelters are pretty big. This one happens to be kind of an octagon angle there. And what we do is we'll actually drill in the center. So let's see if I get my cursor back here. Okay, over here on the right-hand side, you'll see how we got a hole in the center. And in that hole, we're going to sink our 2 hydroglow lights. Now, if I'm fishing in, you know, 12 feet of water or less, I'm not dropping that hydroglow down to bottom. I'm not dropping it underneath the ice. I really kind of want to have that hydroglow just inside the hole. So you're gonna, whether you have a 1 foot hydroglow or a 2 foot hydroglow, you drill that hole. This happens to be about 18 inches of ice right here. Drop that hydroglow down in the hole, and I only want it just the same as like your transducer and electronics. I only want about 3 inches of the stick hanging out below. And the reason why is that will light up that whole area, but it won't be blinding. This is kind of my opinion from trial and error. I found that if you sink that light too far down, it's almost like shining a light in the fish's face, and they might not be able to see, or they might just not like it. But I have kind of found with crappies specifically that they really don't want that light sunk that much below the ice. They kind of want it up there. You can see how lit up the ice is around. Just 1 foot hydroglow will light an area big enough for 6-8 guys to fish around if they wanted to. If you have any questions along the way here, do not hesitate to shoot me a message up there in chat. I should be able to see the notification and have it pop up. So again, what we did is, we got a few guys here in the shack. There's Mr. Gens. He's obviously not getting ready to hydroglow in this picture, but it gives you guys a good idea on what we do when we set up in the hub. So drilling that hole, we're setting those holes all the way around it in a circle. Moving on here. Okay, so now if I'm fishing solo, if it's cool out, I'm going to be fishing in my one-man flip over. I got the clam flip over shacks. It's nice. I can store my gear in the back, my light, everything, tow it right out. When I get there, drill my holes, flip over, and I'm all set. Nice and warm. Get the Mr. Heater Buddy going. So if you look over here on the right-hand side, you'll kind of see I have a hole right here. And in that hole, I have my Vexilar transducer, my electronics, which we'll go over here in a minute, and then I have my hydroglow. In this case, this kind of looks like the hydroglow is down further than it is, but this is actually a 1 foot light, so it's a little bit of an optical illusion. That light's probably sticking maybe 5 inches underneath the ice. And then there's 2 holes on this side and that side. So I have the option, like below here, to actually fish in that center hole with my electronics and that. One thing you got to worry about, obviously, is if you get a fish that's wigging out, it might tangle up either around the light or on your transducer. Anybody that fishes with flashers kind of knows the whole game about getting tangled up there. But for the most part, if you can steer those fish, you'll be okay. Why I like sometimes fishing directly underneath the light is for that same reason about the light blinding the fish. I find that sometimes if I'm fishing, I have these 3 holes set up, right here in this top picture. I find sometimes I'll actually catch more fish out of this hole than this hole here or this hole here. Other times I'll find that it'll be okay, depending on what those fish are really liking. And it also kind of depends on where you are in that weed bed too. I think those fish move around in the weeds that are underneath you there, and one hole may have better structure than the others. We all know that when we're fishing, we can drill a hole 3 feet away from us, and this person can be catching these fish, and that person can be catching none, and that can drive you crazy sometimes. But so sometimes I'll drill these extra holes here, and have options if I can fish in the hole that's directly underneath, or maybe I want to fish to the left or the right. Not only does that give me options for the way the light is lighting it, but it also gives me options if there happens to be a taller standing weed or something in that hole. So just something to think about there. All right, powering the hydroglow. So these Dakota lithium ion batteries are something that I've been using here for 2 years now. I've been using other lithium batteries for a couple years now, or for probably 3-4 years now, but these Dakota lithium batteries have really changed the game. The amount of time that you can actually run 2 lights off from these and run all night long and never have to worry about that battery dying or your light dimming at all. They're really pretty rugged. Now this is the hydroglow light right here. This is kind of a little better look at it for you folks that have never seen one before. This is the 1 foot model. There's a 1 foot, 2 foot, there's 4 foot models. There's all different types. But for what we're doing right here, this is way more than enough. like I said, one light, you could really fish multiple people around with it. Looks like I may have a question up here. Let's see. Oh, okay, that's from before. Okay, and as you can see, you know, they got the truck running over the light. These lights are durable. You do not have to worry about breaking these lights. You could slam them against the ice and not have a problem. They got alligator clips here on the end, so you can clip them directly on the terminals up here. Some of our flashers have an open back to them, so you can actually run, if you got one of these lithium batteries in there, you can run it without worrying about losing, you know, your battery power for your flasher by just clipping that to the back. There's also some of the newer hydroglows have a little connector right here, and you can get basically like a cigarette lighter adapter for it. So if you wanted to have an adapter on somewhere, or if you had a little power box, or maybe you might be fishing in your vehicle. I know a lot of the times we'll actually be able to hydroglow out of our vehicle here. We did quite a bit of hydroglowing out of the truck this year, so you can just plug it right into the outlet or run it out the door. Oh, let's see here. All right, Vexilar Flasher. So there's a couple options for how you can, you know, when you're targeting these fish, how you can see them and how you can help yourself and give yourself a benefit. And my number one go-to, and it's funny here, and I'm not really reading word for word where I wrote here. That's just for kind of reference for anybody that goes back. But I said, better than American Express. You definitely won't leave home without it. I guarantee you, anybody that fishes with a flasher will tell you the same thing. You know, once you start fishing with a flasher, you just don't want to not fish with one. It helps you so much. It basically like taking the blindfold off. So what you'll see here is this is, you know, in the one-man shelter. I got the Vexilar on a hole, Mr. Heater keeping warm. And I put this picture of the Vexilar Flasher up here. This is actually this is the entry model flasher. There's so many newer ones and, you know, with more bells and whistles on them. But really, to kind of show you that just having a flasher in general will help you, you know, become a better fisherman and, you know, catch more fish and be able to see what's going on there. So to explain the dial, some of you that already, you know, have a flasher are already going to know this, but the folks that don't, so this is a Vexilar Flasher. There's 3 colors here. There's green, there's orange, and there's red. And this is all signal strength. Basically what it is that transducer that you see that's coming off this line right here is just sitting below the ice, just enough below the ice. And there's a cone angle on that. The cone goes down. There's different angles. There's 12 degree, there's 19, there's 9, there's 20, you know, there's all different cone angles. I personally like the 12-degree cone angle. That's pretty much my go-to. I fish in a lot of shallow water, so I can actually see my, you know, I can see my bait pretty well with that, and it works good for my flasher. I'm fishing with the Vexilar FLX28. But to go back to this here, now if you're looking at the dial here, this may look confusing to start with, but it's nothing more than this is just below the ice, and this is the water column on a dial. Where you see this red strong signal, that's the bottom. So the bottom's, you know, hard bottom. It shows up. This open area is just open water in between. You'll see that's shooting down a signal, and anything that breaks that plane, it'll come back, whether it's weeds, whether it's fish, your jig, your lure, anything like that. It's going to show you a signal. So as you can see here, keep losing my cursor here. As you can see here, this is a fish that's, you know, about 2 feet up off bottom, and here is your jig going down. So you can see the jig is, you know, a thin green line, and that's because of the signal strength. The jig is smaller, so it's given back, you know, less strength coming down. The fish is bigger, so you see it's getting into that more red. So you can see how that by fishing with a flasher, if you've never fished with one before, instead of sitting there fishing in the hole and watching your rod tip, waiting for the bite, or if you're fishing with light tackle, you got to find bottom and then maybe fish that water column and just keep watching that. If there's weeds in there, you don't know where the weeds are. There could be, you know, so when we're targeting these crappies, a lot of the times I like about, you know, 2-3 feet of weeds on the bottom that those fish are, you know, actually cruising through. So if that was the case, you'd see on this flasher dial right here, there might be some green lines up through here. And even though you still have your fish and your jig there, you might see some green lines, and what those green lines would represent is those would be the weeds that are down there because they're breaking the plane. You can still see your jig go down through there. You can still see a fish come up through there. But what it does is it allows you to know when fishing for the crappies, you see where the jig is on here. A lot of the times, if those crappies are in the weeds, I won't go all the way down in the weeds because I don't really want to get hooked on the weeds and, you know, pull the weeds and then you'll see a mess down there. But I might go down in the weeds, you know, a foot or 6 inches and then start lifting out of there and see if I can get that fish to come up out of the weeds and out of that water column. And without having the electronics or the flasher, you'd have, you know, no chance of really seeing that. All right, here. So we're going to move on. There's another option that we can use, and that's an underwater camera. Now, underwater camera is it's really neat. It does have one drawback, and the one drawback is you know, unless you're down viewing, and what down viewing means is I'm actually going to get the cursor up here. You see this right here? This is the camera, as well as this is the camera. Right here on the back of this, if you hook this cord in the back, that'll actually, instead of the camera sitting horizontal, it'll tilt it up vertical. So you can drop that down in the hole, and depending on how deep you are, I mean, if it's 9 feet, you're going to have to go down below the ice. Unlike a transducer for a Vexilar, where it's just a little bit underneath the ice, you can't, you know, you're going to have to drop that down further. With that is going to give you more of a risk of if you're catching a fish, spooking and, you know, going around that and getting tangled up, you might lose your fish. You also can drill a hole a little bit away from you and drop that down and fish it horizontal. So you would be looking at this view that you're seeing right here. So now this is pretty nice because not only can you see the fish, you can see the weeds, you can see your bait, you can see what type of fish it is. On the flasher, we may think we know what fish it is, but it could be a bluegill. It could be, you know, something else that's down there looking at our bait. So with the camera, you can actually, you know, tell what it is, and you can see if your bait's messed up. And sometimes if these crappies will come up, crappies are light biters, or they could slam it. But when they're a light biter, sometimes they'll come up and they'll just barely grab onto that minnow or that bait or that plastic or whatever you may be fishing with, and sometimes they'll hit it up so you'll actually get that neutral bite. Other times they'll hit it down. Sometimes they'll just start swimming with it, so you just see your line going. You might not even see anything on your rod tip, and that's why when we talk about rods here in a little bit, we're going to talk about how having a sensitive tip is going to be really beneficial. Now, there's a couple options here for cameras. The one on the left is actually a fixed camera, has a screen built right into it. It's a nice soft pack. It's got, I think this one's got like 50 feet of cord, which you're only going to need about 10 feet of it. It's color. So you can drop that down and set that up beside you. Now, the one on the right-hand side is actually runs off a smartphone. I see somebody's got a question up here, so I'm going to go up to that question. Will this be available later on Facebook? Yes, sir, it will be. You'll be able to go on to the Navionics website, and there's a spot where all these webinars are available. So you'll be able to play this back. Okay, so this camera that you see up here on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a smartphone there. Well, what this is this is the same camera as on this fixed one over here, but this is a Wi-Fi box. So you can actually connect your Wi-Fi to this here. You don't need to have, you know, service. It's not using your data or anything like that. It's just like connecting to your wireless router at home. So you connect to this, and you can actually have the fish gets, you know, the camera gets sent right to your phone. You can also do this on a tablet, and multiple phones or tablets can be connected to this. So sometimes if I have the kids out on a trip or something, all kids have a smartphone now. So I'll tell them, hey, go get the app. The app's free, and they'll log in, and they'll be actually able to see the fish on their own tablet, on their own phone. So multiple people can use that. So it's kind of beneficial when you have kids and stuff like that. You know, not everybody is going to be able to be fishing in the hole where the fish are. So that's one drawback there. But for them being able to see it is kind of neat, and getting to see what the fish are that are down in the hole. Another neat thing about that camera is you can actually, if you see a fish go by, you can take a picture. you can also take a video. So if you're fishing with that, and then you can upload it, live to Facebook right then and there, your catch. Or if you see that big fish swim by that you told somebody about and they didn't believe you, you can snap a picture of it and have it. So that's kind of the two options that you have there. Now there's times when I will set up both. I'll actually set up, go back here. I'll set up the underwater camera either on a down view so I can watch those fish and see, or maybe in the weed bed just so I can tell, because those fish will be cruising through there. And if I see crappies coming through there, I'll know that, hey, I got to get serious about it, or what I'm seeing on my Vexilar. I got another question here. I'm going to go check it out. What are the prices of these cameras? Good question. Okay, so this camera, this right here, is around $150, $150 to $200 is the price point here for this one. And then this here, depending on which one you get, is right around $300, but they do go up a little bit more than that. So fairly reasonable price for both of them. Right. Now, one thing I was saying is sometimes I'll use both, and what that'll be is I'll actually have I'll be able to see the fish come in on my Vexilar, because I'll see that red line, and I'll go, what is that fish? Well, then I look over at the camera, and I can go, oh, that's a crappie, or oh, that's a bluegill, or maybe that's a big pike that I don't want to catch. I don't want him to steal my lure. I got a $4 tungsten jig down there, and I don't want him, so I might pull away from it, or I might want to gamble, throw the dice, and see if I can, hook into him and catch him. So sometimes I'll actually use, both, and, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch. All right, so let's talk about rods. There are so many custom rods out there right now, and there's a lot of good rods out there. You got rods from $5 to $150. All of them will catch fish, but you may have a preference of what you like. I definitely have a preference. This is my good buddy Jason Mitchell right here. He has designed a rod called the Meat Stick, and this is, anybody that's watched any of my live videos and stuff knows that I'm a big meat stick fan. I actually like the 20-inch meat stick. It's when I'm fishing in my shelter, I'm able to get a good hook set, or if I'm fishing for crappie, I'm gonna be able to lift pretty high and not sacrifice that when that fish finally commits, hitting the ceiling or hitting the window out in front of me. You'll see it's got very good backbone, but it has this soft tip. And this soft tip is just about like using a spring bobber rod. Now, I do like spring bobber rods. You'll see over here, this is just an example of a spring bobber rod. And what that is nothing more than, this rod could be pretty dang stiff, but with this nice little nitinol or titanium spring bobber that's on here, you have that sensitivity. Now, one of the key factors of why, I fished with spring bobbers for quite a long time, and I liked them, and I still do like them, but I find I'm a plastic swimmer. I fish with 99.9% of the time I'm fishing with soft plastics when I'm fishing for, panfish, or I'm fishing for anything. That other 0.% there is I'm putting on a fathead minnow on maybe a spoon or something to get down there and fish some of those deep water fish. But I find that with the Jason Mitchell Meat Stick, I can really finesse my plastic much better. And I always tell my clients, I say, when you're jigging down there, you always see, well, shake it, let me reduce the spin, shake it, that gets their attention. You can lift up, all these different things you do. But I always tell them, when you're really trying to finesse a crappie to bite that doesn't want to bite, if they want to bite it, they're going to swoop at it, they're going to hit it, you got them. It doesn't really matter what you got. But when you got to finesse those fish, you really got to make sure that jig's not spinning down there. And I'll tell my clients, I'll say, I want you to take and think about that bait there. Now you got this soft plastic on there. I want you to try to wiggle the tails on that soft plastic without moving that jig. And that's how, precise sometimes you have to be to not spook these fish and to get those to commit. Sometimes you got to take it away from them. There's all different kinds of techniques that you can go through, but I personally find that I can do that a lot better with this type of rod. Now, I'm talking about the Meat Stick here. There's other rods out there that probably have the same kind of action, and they have that sensitive tip. So that doesn't mean that this is the rod that you have to, but if you want a rod that I can guarantee will give you good results, this is a good option to look into. I pretty much switched over to mostly all of them for this year going through this season. And I know a bunch of the clients that grabbed them, said, wow, and they picked them up themselves. So something to look into. All right. Bait and tackle. All right. So there's tons and tons of stuff out there. And it's funny, this bait up in the left-hand corner, this is actually the Jamie by Mackie Plastic. It's a bait that I designed with Scott Brower, the owner of it. I love the bait. It works great. It's a match the hatch bait. But there's a couple other baits that I use just as much, and I put them on here as well. And this is actually called a wormy. Now these colors are not really specific to what we need. This is just a picture that I grabbed that we had. So I do want to talk to you a little bit about color and glow when we're hydroglowing for crappies. So first, you get the Jamie from Mackie Plastic. This is Mackie Plastic right here. That's their logo. This is the wormy. This is the spiny. And this is a minnow. So these are 4 things that when I am hydroglowing for crappie that I'm probably going to have for a go-to. Most of the time, my go-to is this wormy right here. This wormy, now the light's green, so there's a white glow that glows green. That light keeps it charged up really good. That tends to work really good for me. So it looks white but glows green. There's a red glow or a pink glow. That Clearwater Lakes, that red glow seems to be king. It really does. A lot of the times when I'm running that red glow, I'll actually switch up to a Jamie or a Super Jamie, which is the next size bigger in the red, and that seems to do really good. Now, if I want to, depending on what size jigs or hooks that I'm using, I might go down to one of these. If it's a year of the young bite, if they're biting, if they're eating year of the young, this Mackie minnow right here on the bottom is king. Now, sometimes I'll actually use the dark color of that, to mimic the minnow. Still, that white, that red, all work very, very well. So 99% of the time, that's what I have on. With that being said, some folks like to use live bait, and here's 3 options here. Waxworms, this is a fathead minnow, and these are colored spikes, or AKA maggots. For colored spikes, if I'm using colored spikes, for me, it seems like the one color that I think sometimes makes a difference is the red. The blue, the green, the yellows, I don't know. The only thing I seem to notice a difference on is the red ones. So for me, if I'm going to be using spikes, which I rarely do, it's either going to be white or these red ones. Sometimes I'll find with the night bite that waxworms will definitely be king. We got a lake right here close to me called Lake Bomazine. And I tell you what, there's sometimes that these waxworms are just phenomenal with a crappie at night. Also, there's some folks that maybe will dead stick a rod. So maybe you'll be swimming your plastic or your bait with one rod, and you may set up either a couple of rods on a bucket or something and put some fathead minnows on there. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that works as well. I like to finesse them a little bit more. Seems to just do better for me. But you might pick up a bonus fish or 2 on that one dead stick rod. Now, what am I matching these up with? So it looks like we got a question up here, and we'll check it out. I love the half-ant drop, one of my favorites. You got it, Christian. I'm telling you, when I was putting this together, I wanted to find a good picture so people could really see that. So if we're talking, typical fishing, day in, day out, day fishing, night fishing, most of the time now that we have in this bottom right-hand corner, see if I can get my cursor back here, this is the drop kick jig. This red, and then there's a gold as well, which isn't pictured here. I almost feel like with that red and that gold, I can target any species of fish, whether it be a northern pike, a bass, a crappie, perch, bluegills. By changing the size, smaller and larger on that, and just changing my color or my plastic or my styles, I feel I can catch pretty much any fish out there year round. That doesn't mean that I don't use other jigs, but I really do not find that much of a reason to change up. Sometimes when the fish get really finicky, I may go as small as possible. That might get me into maybe a drop jig or something very small there. With that being said, if you look at this half ant drop that Christian was talking about, this thing, for some reason, is a crappy machine at nighttime, whether you're putting bait on it or you're putting soft plastic on it. And I think what it is, most of us now are fishing horizontal. We got the horizontal presentation. We're swimming our plastics. It helps with match the hatch. But this half ant drop is actually a vertical jig. Now, although it's vertical, we can still grab the line and pull that knot forward, and that'll give it about a 45-degree angle there. And I think it's just like our rocker jigs that we've used for many years. But that thing, it just gets this extra, and I think what it is it's taunting to the fish. I'm not sure if it so much matches anything, but I think it's taunting to the crappies. And sometimes those crappies will instinctively just strike at a bait. I think that might have something to do with it. Another thing that's nice about it is it's small. So it gets really small, so where if you're getting those fish that are maybe short biting, when they hit this, you got them. It's in there, especially if you're watching on the camera. Now, I had to throw in this blade spoon. Now, for nighttime crappie fishing, or there's other things we'll talk about afterwards. If we're fishing in deep water, which I said, I seldom hydroglow in deep water for the crappie, but if I was to hydroglow in the deep water, I would be running this blade spoon, and I would be probably tipping it with a fathead minnow fishing in that deep water. This blade spoon is something to definitely add to the arsenal. Fishing in the daytime out in deep water, everything eats this. The red and the blue and the white, all these colors that are right here, all pretty good. So I have caught fish on them at night, but I tend to fish a lot smaller. So that brings me back to these two options right here. Maybe a question up here. Does the water, this is Dennis. Hey, Dennis. Does the water quality affect how the hydroglow works? There have been times we have had no luck with the light, and it seems that the areas where there is a lot of cloudy water or particles in the water column, like in the Connecticut River, the Harriman Reservoir for smelt. Okay, so that's a good question, Dennis. And this is one of those things that goes back to, sometimes those fish, when they just don't want to eat what we're giving them at night, I find that times where you'll drop in the light and you'll see so much particles, basically zooplankton and different, aquatic insects will come up that it'll be hard on your flasher. You can see them on your flasher. On the camera, you can see them. Sometimes it'll actually clog it. You'll actually have to fish away from it. And for me, it seems like the times that's the thickest are the times that I don't have that much luck. And the only thing I could think of is I take it back to summertime fishing with the hydroglow light. So I'll actually go trout fishing for rainbows. And in the summertime, you'll see all this, microorganisms and stuff in the water. And you'll be able to see, so now you don't have the ice all around you. Oh, there's storm. You'll be able to actually see the fish swimming in the water. And I'll see those crappies come up 10, 15 feet below the surface, and they'll be just cruising through all that bait, those microorganisms, and they're actually rolling on their sides and stuff. I think what they're doing is they're taking all that's, they're filtering that out with their gills, and they're eating that way. So I think sometimes when you have that kind of forage and that food that's in there, it's not that they're not there. It's that they just don't want to eat what we're giving them. I don't know if we can go small enough. I've actually played around with this before. Instead of targeting the trout, I switched over to trying to get the crappies to bite. And the only way I could get them to bite is the smallest I could possibly go small, and just maybe a quarter to a half inch, just little bit of the wormy tail on something, and I've actually got them to bite that way. And I think that kind of backs up what I feel. Again, this is just from trial and error, so this isn't something I'm going to tell you that I'm 100% right on, but I fish a lot, and I like to try to figure stuff out. So for what I've figured out, I think that there's times like that we just can't give them what they want, and I think that's the reason why, Dennis. I hope that answered your question for you, sir. Okay, so let's move on here. All right, so just a couple tips and techniques, a couple things just bullet points that I wanted to go over with you. Make sure your bait presentation is perfect. With that being said, we always talk about, when you're swimming your baits and you're dropping them down there, you don't want that jig. If that jig's spinning around, that'd be the equivalent of me trying to hand you something and moving my hand left and right. You're not going to try to just take it out of my hands. You're going to wait until I stop. And that's the same thing with the fish. The fish don't want to get that jig that's spinning around. They want to wait for that jig to stop, to either face them or face away from them before they come in to get it. So make sure that jig presentation is perfect. Make sure your bait's not spinning. Make sure that if you're fishing with a horizontal jig and a fish may come up and hit you, you may miss it. The next thing you know, that horizontal, it may have pulled your knot on where you're tied on down. So now when you're fishing, you're not getting that same swimming presentation. So you're going to want to grab that line and grab that jig and pull that line right back towards the hook. And what that'll do is that'll set you back up at that horizontal presentation. You'd be surprised at how that one little tip right there will help you catch more fish instead of having fish look at it. Plus, it'll also help you reduce that line twist. Couple different ways that you can make sure that presentation is perfect is by looking on the camera or watching it on your Vexilar. Using your electronics to see what the fish like or don't like. Tell you, when you start off with something and it may not be correct, if we start off and they're biting, and hey, that's all well and good. But, just like the other day, I was down fishing with Dennis on the Connecticut River. There's tons and tons of fish there, but they just wanted what they wanted. And if you didn't give it that, then you didn't have a chance of getting them. The next day, they ate anything that came by them. So watch on your electronics. Watch what your bait does. Watch how the fish react. If they like a color, that's when you start switching your colors. Maybe take that white off, put that red on. Try that motor oil. Try the different colors. Okay, maybe they don't want a long bait. Maybe they want a small bait. Maybe they want you to upsize, downsize. So use your electronics to help you figure out what the fish want. All right, when hydroglowing, figure out where the best bite is, under or around the light. So I kind of talked about that a little bit earlier, but I kind of want to refresh. If we're sitting in that hub shelter and that light's in the center, and maybe one person's catching fish, maybe that's the fish corridor. Maybe that's where the fish are coming in. That's why they're catching those fish. But it also could be maybe they're just outside of the light. Maybe it's the way the weeds are there. Same thing as if the person that's fishing closest to the light or fishing in a light where the hole is there, if they're fishing underneath it, now you're fishing kind of in the shadow underneath that light because that light emits light all the way around it, but not below it. So something to kind of pay attention to. If you're out in multiple shacks with multiple hydroglows and you see your buddies catching them with a light in this hole and he's fishing in this hole, then you're going to want to pay attention and you want to try to do the same thing. Another good tip is when you're hydroglowing, I know I talked about getting out there an hour or two early. Well, once you find those fish, it's a good idea to drill those holes so you don't have to do that. You kind of, if we're drilling the hole, sometimes you can drill a hole and it won't spook the fish. Sometimes you drill a hole and the fish slide. So it's nice to have your setup or maybe a couple backup plans already drilled out and getting quiet before you're ready to sink that light. Now, as for sinking the light, we're talking right now we have some snowpack cover. So you wonder, well, will the light work in the daytime or, because it's dark down there? Well, I've tried it during the daytime and I've caught fish around it. But I can't say for sure as if that was making me catch more fish than if I didn't have the light there. At night, definitely noticeable. The people, I can't think of how many times we've gone out night fishing before, and a couple of us have had hydroglows, and a couple of the guys may have had just their flashlight or a light they set on top, or a lantern, and by the end of the night they were going crazy, or they wanted to drill a hole next to our hydroglow lights. So it definitely does seem to make a difference for that. So trying to have your holes drilled ahead of time, just to, you want to give yourself every opportunity you can to, to be able to capitalize on those fish being in that area or in that surrounding area when you sink the light. A lot of times I'll sink that light the last half hour. I'll sink it and I'll get it started. So that'll start getting some of those, microorganisms and stuff to come up off the bottom. They'll start kind of, we call it soaking the light. So, okay. Document your trips for future use. What worked, what did not, hot bait, moon phase, barometer, time that the best bite was, the date. It's amazing. It truly is amazing to me. After starting a journal for so many years, I've been guiding since 2000. I've been fishing a lot longer, but I really started, keeping track of, other than memory, of where I caught fish, what I caught them on, and what the scenarios were, probably about 10 years ago. And as a guide, if I'm out every single day, taking care of customers, I can't always look for that next bite. I got a great network of guys, a pretty good brotherhood that gives me honest, good information when I need it. But it's amazing how many times I can just open up that book and within a week or two on either side of that, and you can kind of figure that out if it's right as schedule, or if maybe it's a week ahead of time, or it's a week behind. Once you figure that out, all that information really falls into place, and it's amazing how much how that benefits me. And I do encourage you guys to do that as well. Now, I didn't have a way, I didn't want to put a video on here of the Navionics mobile app of how to do that, but I am going to take a second to show you on here how I do it. And I'm going to see, hopefully this works out good. So any of you folks that have, your cell phone or your tablet or anything that has the Navionics mobile app, I think I'm just going to ask you guys a question. Let's see where the camera is on here. All right. You can see that pretty good, right? I can see it. Somebody want to answer that in the chat? Yes. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do here, this is Navionics mobile app. For those of you that already have this, you're already going to know what this is. For those that you don't, you're going to have to kind of download it to get that. You can get it in your Android or your iTunes store. So you're going to click on OK here. Kind of watching it on my screen here. Now, it brings you to a map of where you are. You can click on this little arrow here, and that will put you right on top. So now it's showing you where my house is. Now, up in the top right-hand corner, there's two things. There's a magnifying glass, and then there's a little camera. Now, this is how I have started to document all of my information. And what I'll do is I'll literally say I catch, a big crappie, or I catch a bass, or whatever I happen to catch. I'll take a picture of it, or I'll take a picture of the location, or a picture of a friend who caught a fish. And, I'm using this for information, but you could use this just to, remember where it is. And this will mark on your graph. So if I click on that camera, it's basically just going to bring up my camera, just like I was taking a picture. So now I'm going to take a picture of you guys here. Actually, I'll take a picture of the webinar. All right. So now it's going to ask me if I want it or not. And I'm going to confirm with this. Oh, where's the camera here? I'm going to confirm with this that I want to keep it. So now you'll see right on top. Let's see, I'll zoom in here a little bit. So right on top of where here we go. Right on top of where I am, it's going to throw a little picture of a camera. I can actually tap my screen, bring up the cursor, and then hit this information box, and it'll show me, it gives me the option, right? Oops. It gives me the option to actually go on here, which is kind of whited out, and I can click and select that picture. And okay, there you go. And so I could select that photo and bring that photo up. But it also gives me a spot for notes here. Not only does it give me the coordinates, so I can go back there and put a marker on there, but it gives me a spot where I can go in there and I can actually put, you know, okay, I was fishing with the spiky and 9 feet of water. It was just before the full moon, the temperature was, and I'll put that information in there, and that'll always be stored in there. And it's funny how many times I can go back and I can look in those areas and check that stuff out and have that information really be beneficial to me. So if you already have the app and you're not using that feature, hey, start using that. It's pretty neat, and it's free. Oh, let's see. I'm blind. Okay, let's see what else we got here. Moving on. All right, so here's just some hydroglow fun. We're pretty much done. If you guys have any questions about anything that I went over, shoot me a message up here in chat. But I'm just going to kind of show you a few pictures of just having some fun with the hydroglow lights. So you can see here, this is me and Scott Brower, the owner of Mackie Plastic, you know, getting together, having a little fun. Looks like we got a gill upside down, and we got some fish there. Over on the right, some nice crappie. You can see the hydroglow, just as I said, just barely sunk in the hole, the same one, so we're fishing right out of that. I believe this is out the door of the truck. We're literally fishing out the door of the truck with this one. Hydroglow fishing lights, because sleep's overrated. Yes, it is. This is something that I kind of wanted to tell you, too, is it seems like for me up here, I'm not sure how this is across the ice belt, but during February when the lake's flipping over and the moon's just right, it seems like that bite in the daytime is very tough. Sometimes you get that last half hour where those fish are biting. And there's about a week or a week and a half during February where I'll sometimes, if I, you know, depending on if I have clients or what I have, we'll start fishing at dark and fishing to the night because the bite is just that much better at night. And it's funny how I've been doing that for probably about 4 years now. And it seems like you look over here, this was one afternoon. We fished, this bucket of fish is from us 3 guys. We fished during the day all day long, and we probably caught a couple fish. Just before dark, we found a couple. We put the light in. We all fished around it. And then we ended up, you know, I don't think we all got our limits there, but we got a bucket of beautiful crappie there. Looks like I'm going to have a question up here. I'm going to go check it out. Okay. So, Christian, is using the hydroglow legal in every state? Vermont, yes. New York, yes. New Hampshire, you cannot use a jacklight, but they did say that it is not a jacklight, so we got it approved for fishing in New Hampshire. I believe Minnesota, no. There is other states. So before you go and you sink a hydroglow into the water, definitely check with your state's regulations to make sure that you're not doing anything illegal. Can you use the app to navigate solely? Yes, you definitely can. There's a lot of folks now. I mean, Navionics has been selling chips that go in our chart plotters for many years. And it's been a few years now that we've had the mobile app or the app for the iPad. There's a lot of charter boat captains now that actually have their iPad right on their dash, and they're using that so they have a full, 10, 12-inch screen run off their Navionics map. They can keep it up to date, fresh every day. It's $50 to run it. And they can do all these other little things, a couple of those features that I was just showing you. If you had to pick one jig weight and ant weight, what would it be? Or do you want to expand on weight? Boy, it's really tough. I'll go back to this on the screen here just to show folks. Okay. Ontario's a no, so you cannot use it. Oh, actually, I knew that because my good buddy Rob Jackson's up there. And I was trying to tell Rob, though, I was wondering, so John, what about if you put it in your hut just laying on top of the ice, not in your hole, not trying to track fish or anything like that, using it for light? I wonder if that's a gray area or if that would be legal. Quebec is a no, too. Yep. Yeah, Canada is a no. but I don't understand how they couldn't stop you from using the green light to light your shelter. Yep, and that I believe would work fine for helping with the fish. Honestly, we'd sink it in the hole, but I've tried it both ways, and I've done good both ways. But we have the ability to do it, so I don't. Okay, so go back to that question. So you got the 164th here, and you got the 132nd. If I had to just choose 1 and 1, I would match up the regular Jamie, with the 164th, because you can always catch bigger fish on a smaller bait, but sometimes fish don't want to bite that bigger bait. And you know, it's funny, you hear people, big fish, big bait all the time, but time and time again, while we're jigging, we catch, I mean, this year we just did a 17, a 15, a couple 12-pound pike fishing in 16 feet of water with little baits. We had 45 tip-ups set up, and we caught a couple 7-pounders and 8-pounders on them. So it just shows you that, you know, big bait, big fish, maybe, but I think it's more or less big bait, no little fish sometimes is what it tends to be. So maybe if you get one, you get a good one. That's just opinion, though. So, yeah, I'm probably going to go 164th, small Jamie. And then if you told me I had to pick a color, well, it'd be tough. I'd either have to pick like a glow red, which is like a pink color, or a white. Those would be my go-to choices. If I was to just pick in general off this page what I would go to, I would definitely go the smallest drop kick available or next size up, and I would probably run wormy. Wormy, small drop kick. Give me a couple color. Give me a gold or a red one, and give me 3 colors of the wormy, and I think we're good to go to catch anything just by trading share presentation. Do you know if Hydroglow works well for horn pout in the spring and the summer? That's funny you ask. I'm going to get that here in just a second, Dennis. So let's move along here. Back pictures. Okay. Yeah, so this is some more pictures, just some more catching, just some fun that we've had. What do I want to get to? Okay, so other species that love the glow. Smelt. If you're smelt fishing and it's legal to use a Hydroglow and you're not using one, you're completely missing out. We actually did an article. This is an article here on the right-hand side. I think it came out in the Ice Fishing magazine this year. Talked about fishing for smelt with the Hydroglow light. It's amazing. You will pull smelt in from hundreds of yards away that see this light. Now, one thing I want to mention to you is with smelt, we're usually fishing 40, 50, 60 feet of water. I will sink that Hydroglow 5 feet underneath the ice. And I believe what that does is that helps, for one, it helps it cast further underneath the ice. But also it helps, those fish will actually come up to the light, and they're not afraid of the light. They'll actually swim right around the light. So I'm not sure the difference between how the smelt perceive the light versus the crappie do and the other fish. But they have no problem swimming around it. They'll bump into the thing. Catfish, same thing. What we'll do with the catfish is we'll actually a lot of times we're out fishing, 9, 10 feet water in the edge of the weed edges, and we'll actually, most Hydroglow's got like a 20, 25 foot cord on. We'll throw that out, and we'll get that out away from the boat, so it's not next to the boat. We'll throw that out and we'll let it sit right on the bottom, and then we'll cast our baits out. So if that's out here, directly out from the side of the boat, we'll put a line here, a line here, a line here, and a line here around that, and we'll fish, just around that, and we do pretty good. And that works the same way with the pout. The pout and the catfish react pretty much the same. Another thing we'll do with the catfish is we will put, so I say we had those 4 lines out, 2 of those lines will actually be bobbers with minnows on them or cut bait or shrimp, just a foot underneath the ice. We'll actually catch most of our bigger fish suspended underneath a lighted bobber. A lot of the times those ones on the bottom, we're catching a lot of those smaller fish. Those bigger fish are actually, as catfish, a bottom feeder, or just up underneath the ice, or not the ice, but underneath the lake when we're fishing for them. Most panfish like it. We catch perch at night. We catch crappies. We catch good old rock bass. And we certainly do catch pout. You guys know we had the hydroglow tournament here, first ever hydroglow tournament on Lake Cortonia. And one of the species that we had for lunker was pout. All right, gar fish. The gar seem to like it. We bowfish. I'm not sure if any of you bowfish. But definitely the gar like it. It'll attract them in. You'll notice they'll start swimming around it. They'll swim by the light. And another fish that I know there's certain places, again, that you're probably not allowed to do it. But for us, rainbow trout with hydroglow light is just amazing. We put those in, and we'll actually fish them over the top of the boat. We do it through the ice as well. But when we're out in the boat in the summertime, we'll go out and we'll sink the lights just underneath the water, just so the light's submerged. And what that does is the light attracts the bugs in the summertime because of it being warm. Instead of having the bugs up in the boat where you attracted to the light, if you had a lantern like in the old days or something, or if you have a headlamp or something like that, all the bugs go into the water, and a lot of the bugs will actually drown in the water. They'll go right down in the water, and you'll see them spread all over the water and stuff. And the nice part about that is, instead of back in the day, we would actually, when we're trout fishing, we'd have our lanterns, we'd put them on poles, we'd cut a beer can or a soda can half and put that on half of the globe, so the light was facing out so the fish would see it, and we could see our lines and stuff, but it wasn't blinding us in the boat. Now we don't even bring lanterns out in the boat. We sink the hydroglows in there. We'll have our headlamps on in case we need to retie or bait or something, or flip on the boat light. And then the hydroglows, you can actually see your line coming up. You can see your rod tips and everything. No bugs on you. You can see, and no more lanterns or propane or smelly fumes or anything like that. Okay. Here's myself and my buddy Captain Dan. We went out and had some fun here a while ago. And thanks for attending. I want to thank all of you for taking the time. I hope you learned something. Hope it wasn't too redundant for those of you that have already done it. This will be available for replay. It's been recorded, so that will go on the Navionics website here, and you'll be able to go back and take a look at it. So again, I want to thank all of you for taking the time to watch. If you have any more questions, don't hesitate to ask. I'll stay here for a minute or two and see where you guys are at. Thanks for the presentation. Thank you. Well, thank you all. Do you ever tune your jigs by bending the hooks? Definitely. So I will actually take, for the most part, and most of my jigs, I'll take my hemostats and I will pull that hook out. I always open that up. I find that, sometimes you'll lose fish, especially if it's a fish that's hey, Andy, no problem. Andy Robinson on here. He's actually, him and his dad won our tournament series this year. So hats off to those guys, father and son team, fishing against some of the best ice fishermen in the Northeast. Yeah, champions. Want to give a shout out to Christian, who makes the trophies for our series. But yeah, again, bending that hook out just to open that up a little bit. When that fish grabs on there and you may pull it too fast or something, it gives you a chance for it to dig in versus just to pull out. Looks like there might be some questions up here. Dennis. Let's go slam some fish.